Hello, welcome back to another video. We're going to talk about the element of air in ancient history, in cultures, and traditions. What I find about the elements, you guys, is that it's not taught to us in school, really. Like, it's taught to us, earth, air, wind, fire, but it's not taught in terms of how all of these other cultures in the world across history connect with those elements. And I find that very fascinating because it's almost like the time that we're in is very disengaged with the elements. And I think part of that has to do with the sort of monotheistic coexistence of religion and how religion is all about not idolizing anything else, but then also the fact that we're kind of leaning into a time of the rise of technology. I'm 30 years old. I was born in 95. So seeing that shift and how it's almost taking people away from creation. And so one of the reasons why I was guided this year to discuss an element every quarter and using the fifth element of spirit through weekly intuition practices, you can find that again, Instagram, TikTok, is because this is the time that we're in. We're getting into technology. So what better time to actually enter this age of Aquarius that is asking us to connect with social media in different ways, AI, radical revolution, than connecting back with creation, connecting back with the elements. So the curriculum is really to remind you all that every single aspect of your life on a daily basis, whether you're aware of it or not, is related to an element and a coexistence of that element. And so when you're, for example, speaking your words out into existence, again, I always say this, I said this 2 videos ago, your words are spells, that's why they call it spelling. So being cognizant of what you say is going out into the ether and casting spells in your everyday life. So being mindful of those things can kind of help you understand, not necessarily to idolize the elements, but the power of what these elements that God created that is abundant in your everyday life and how it surrounds you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this because I just find it fascinating. And although I particularly don't resonate with some of these kind of points, it's important to know because in school we learned about different religions and we learned about different countries in the different continents. Why didn't we learn about how each tradition and culture had a different kind of association with an element? I think that's very powerful. Ancient traditions were very, very connected to the elements in their everyday life, a little bit more than we are today. But I would still say that everything you do on a daily basis is very interesting, is connected with an element. And I want to say cooked because that was the example that was coming through in my channeling here. Like, for example, when you're cooking food, some of you have stoves that still use fire, right? And so that is an element of fire. The gas stove, for example, right? Electric stove as well is tapping into that. There's different things that you do on a daily basis that are connected to an element. And so it's important to be aware of that. The intricacy of these traditions and cultures and their connection to creation is powerful. And it shows through the intricacy of their architecture and kind of what they represent. So Greek culture, enema and ether. The Greeks actually personified winds as gods. Boreas, Notus, Zephyrus, and Eurus. The ether was the air of the heavens. The Egyptians believed in Shu, the god of air and light who held up the sky and separated it from the earth, enabling life and cosmic order. The Chinese elemental theory, Wu Xing. Air isn't one of the 5 core elements, but it is implied in qi, the life force or breath that animates all things through fang or wind. Air is one of the most important forms of moving qi. Hindu and yogic tradition. The Vayu Tatra, the air element, governs movement, life force, and the nervous system, which I do find that very fascinating because that does make sense. The air element representing the nervous system. Even though we said that the air element is also representative of the heart chakra, you can think of that in terms of like an energy sense. We talked about that in the last video or 2 videos ago. So if you're in a state of anxiety and your cortisol levels are high, you're very stressed and anxious, it starts to show in your exterior and your facial expressions in your body, either through your skin breakouts or through your organs and the way that they function. And so taking breath, right? Meditation, breath work, taking a deep breath in general, you don't even need to make it a huge thing, is regulating your nervous system, right? So inhaling air is regulating your nervous system. So that makes sense to me. I see that connection. Vayudeva is the god of wind, father of Hanuman. So the pranayama, prana is something that we talked about, it means life force, was developed as a secret discipline to master the element of air within the body. So tapping into your life force energy, your pranayama, this is to describe the element of air that's flowing in your body, essentially the breath that's flowing in your body. So all in all, this is telling me that these cultures and traditions so far are identifying the elements as gods. And although most of us don't even do this in this day and age, we don't worship more than one god, we can see the value of why these cultures and traditions were connecting with that. They were connected to the element in a way, to nature essentially, that we are not necessarily collectively connected to today. And that speaks volumes, because you see a lot more people are sick today than they were during that time. And another thing, Native American traditions, air is associated with spirit freedom and the great mystery. The east direction, which we talked about 2 videos ago, and air represents new beginnings, wisdom, and vision. And some animal symbols of air, obviously anything that's flying in the air, eagle, hawk, owl, butterfly. I want you to think of yourself sort of having these wings, and as you continue to experience your everyday life, these wings behind you, they're part of your soul. They're part of your soul incarnation, and they're here to help guide you to flow through life, to connect with different aspects of your journey. And one of the easiest things that I need you guys to remember, well, 2 things, is connecting with the air element really does start with breath work. Breath is life. We're all connected through breath. That's one of the easiest ways to regulate your nervous system. It's one of the easiest ways to kind of align your chi, make sure you're in a state of like calmness and less anxiety. Taking a deep breath when things get really messed up and stressful, because we all need it in this day and age, but also remembering that your words are spells, and that's why they call it spelling. So anything that you say into the ether is actually co-creating your reality, and it doesn't need to happen right away. It's gonna happen though. And you will, some of you guys who have done some of the inner work are already made aware of this. It's already started to happen in your everyday life. And so that's kind of the 2 things that I would recommend you connect with. Like, yes, all of these kind of traditions and cultures and civilizations in history have treated the elements, the air element, as specifically in relation to a god. It doesn't mean you need to do that, but what we can think of it as is the connection of those cultures with the elements speaks volumes to the health that they experienced, how healthy they were. There were less sick people back then, kind of the ability to connect with the earth grid in a way that most of us aren't really connected with nowadays. A lot of kids, for example, their parents just push an iPad in front of them from the get-go at 2 years old, a couple months old. And I do understand how Gen Alpha, for example, my ear is ringing, is kind of benefiting from technology in a way. They're learning quicker, Miss Rachel, all those things, but also recognizing that there's a generation that is not going to experience the outdoors in the same way that we did. This is just a food for thought. Air energy is very sacred, the element of air, and it is coexisting with us in each and every life aspect. Breathing in and breathing out, which is something that we don't always think about, but our body just does. I hope that this video resonated. A little bit of a quick one, but we do have some other kind of activities coming up in the next few days, some clearing videos, air visualization and rituals, maybe also a little bit discussion on healing your trauma with air energy as well. And then before you know it, Q3 will be done and we'll be jumping into the element of water. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys. I'm sending you all so much love and light. And until next time, we'll see you on the next one. Go and grow.